Hi, welcome to Highland Cottage Books. I'm Martha and this is Highland Cottage, and today we are going to talk about 3 brand new thrillers that are dark and twisty, and you should absolutely have them on your radar. I made coffee and tea. Have a seat on the couch and let's talk books. So, 2 things before we start. First, to quote an American musical theater classic, it is hot as hell in Philadelphia, and it is 90 degrees, and I don't have central air, so that means that I have a window air conditioner that I need to turn off in order to record, or else you'll hear in the background. And that also means that I am in my own personal sauna. So over the course of the video, I may start to melt. Don't be afraid. It's just the weather. The second thing is that I received all 3 of these books as advance reader copies from the publishers. And while I am very grateful, my opinions and my reviews will not be swayed by their generosity. And in fact, for every book that I review on this channel that's an advanced reader copy, there are probably 2 or 3 that I am not reviewing. I made a conscious decision when I started Highland Cottage Books that I was only going to give positive reviews. That doesn't mean that I love every book. It doesn't mean that I'm lying to you about the books. It simply means that I am not telling you about books that I didn't like. I don't want to dump on writers' work, so I'm only telling you about the books that I can recommend full-throatedly. In the past month, I've read 12 books, and I'm telling you about 3 of them today, so I am picky. Once again, I ended up reading books on a similar theme, not knowing what I was getting into when I cracked open their pages. The theme this month is grown-ass men taking advantage of teenage girls. And having been a teenage girl in the past, I can tell you that that's not one of my favorite topics to read about, partially because it's usually not handled very well. However, each of these authors does a great job in reminding the reader and the other characters as necessary that while these young women who aren't women yet, I'm doing it myself, while these children are up to things that may be a bit adult for them or unwise, it is pounded into us repeatedly that we are talking about young people, we are talking about children, and any sort of victim blaming is shut down very quickly, which I appreciate. In Forget Me Not, Claire Campbell is a journalist who has returned home after many, many years to take care of her mother who has gotten in an accident. And while she's there, she discovers a group of pictures that has her reevaluating the circumstances under which her big sister disappeared when she was 18 years old. The big sister was 18 years old. Claire was maybe 12 when this happened, still very, very small. So she wasn't quite sure what was going on at the time. A man was convicted of the crime, but they never found big sister Natalie's body, and they never really had complete closure. Claire ends up taking a job at the farm where her sister spent the summer before her disappearance. She sees some pictures in her mother's collection of the sister being very, very happy. And so she does it to reconnect with her on one level, and also to see if there might be some things that the police overlooked when they were doing their investigations. While she's there, she discovers a diary from the 1980s written by another teenage girl. What follows is a mystery that unfolds in 2 separate timelines. I personally love mysteries and thrillers where the twists are such that you think one thing is happening, you think you're being clever, and then you realize, oh no, it was this other thing all along. And it's nicely laid out in such a way that you aren't like, that came out of left field, but instead you're kind of kicking yourself that you didn't figure it out. This dances that fine line nicely in that everything makes sense in the end. Stacy Willingham wrote a book called Flicker in the Dark, which I enjoyed, but this book I think is much more sophisticated and much better. The less you know about Guess Again by Charlie Donlea, the better off you are, but I will say that the name of it is very apt. Every time you think you know something is going on, you realize, oh wait, no, it's this other thing. But it's done in a way that is always justified and always very clever. So I'm okay with that. The story basically focuses on a ER doctor who used to be a police detective. He quit because he was sick of not being able to save the victims before they were victims. He was able to get them justice, but he wasn't able to help them in real time. So he wanted to become a doctor because he could see somebody in trouble and actually do something to help them. He gets pulled into a cold case. It's the disappearance of a girl named Callie, who was a star athlete in a small town. What sets this story apart is that at the same time, there is a serial killer who has spent decades in solitary confinement, and he can't have information about the cold case, and yet somehow he does. The crime happened while he was in prison. He doesn't have any contact with the outside world, and yet somehow he knows what happened. So he is trading his information for a favor. I do have a little bit of a caveat in my recommendation on this book. I loved the first 95% of this book. However, in the last few pages, it is clear that a sequel or a series is being set up. There are ways to set up a sequel or a series that allow the original book to stand on its own merits. And I feel that the way it was done put a little ding on the satisfaction that I received from the closure of the book. I feel like had I known that, oh, this is going to be the first book in a series, I would have felt differently, and maybe it was just a matter of expectations. But I feel like that the ending could have been handled slightly better. However, it did not take away from my enjoyment overall in the book, and now you know. So you won't be going in thinking everything will be 100% wrapped up. It won't be. There will be a loose end or two, but the book overall is great, and I do highly recommend it. We Are All Guilty Here is the first book that I've read by Karin Slaughter, and it is my understanding that she writes very, very dark books, and this is easily one of the darkest books I've ever read. That having been said, I do think that she handled very sensitive topics very well. It never felt exploitative. It never felt gratuitous. We are talking about two 15, 14-year-old girls who are up to some very dangerous things, and they end up going missing. There were several times in this book where I was reading and I realized that I kind of had this look of disgust on my face, like my face was frozen in this look. And with reason, because what happens to these girls is not good. But at the same time, I never felt like it was told in a way that is like, ooh, naughty, ooh, taboo, ooh, whatever. No, it's very clear that Slaughter is telling you, here's some horrible things happening to children, and at no point is... Actually, no, what I should say is that throughout the book, there are various characters who attempt to say things like, well, you know, they shouldn't have been doing that, or, you know, those girls were no good. But every time that happens, Slaughter is careful and goes out of her way to show you why those people are wrong, or why those people have a vested interest in having you believe those things about children who are the victims of a terrible crime. That it is clear that she is systematically taking apart those arguments that you often see when kids are taken advantage of, teenagers are taken advantage of, young women are taken advantage of, or young men are taken advantage of in this way. It is clear that she is telling you that no, society is wrong because the powerful people are wrong. In order to present it like this, they have to do that in order to maintain their power, in order to keep people in line, but not the right people in line, to keep the people without power in line. So I'm not going to go deep into what this book is about because this book has several layers to it. It's very sophisticated in its storytelling. At the same time, it's very easy to read. It's a very smart book without being a difficult read. Emotionally, it is a difficult read. You have plenty of compelling characters that you can empathize with or relate to, while also meeting several monsters. It's very, 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 very well done. And out of these books, it is my favorite. And it is certainly one of the best books I have read this year. It's one of the best books I have read in several years, actually. So I highly recommend it. I also recommend it because it is told almost entirely from the point of view of women. There is a visiting investigator from the FBI who has come in, who is a woman who has written the book. Literally, she has written textbooks about missing persons cases involving teenage girls. And there is also a deputy who is, maybe she's not a deputy, maybe she's someone higher in it. She's the second down from the top. She's the person right below the sheriff, whoever that is. And she is the person who has taken over this investigation because a new girl has gone missing, and it seems to be either a copycat case or maybe from the same person. We don't know what's happened. And what's interesting is that now that women are looking at the case, we're getting perhaps new insights, because in the first case, it was a male-led investigation. And the sheriff at that time was a very smart man, a very thoughtful man, but was coming at it from the point of view of a man. He didn't know what it was like to be a teenage girl, whereas these two women are certainly looking at it from the point of view of what the girls were going through, from that immediate level of empathy and relatability. And so they have insight that the men in charge before didn't have. And it is very nicely done. I can't go any further, but this is the first book in a series. It's called the North Falls series. Unlike Guess Again, we know that going in, and this book, if there was never another book in this series, it would be completely fine, because it ends in a way that is very, very satisfying, which is not fully the case in Guess Again. But having been said, I am very excited, particularly to read about Emmy, who is the police officer I was talking about, and maybe about Jude. Maybe Jude will come back. She's the FBI person. She's retiring from the FBI, so maybe she'll come back, because they seem to work well together. So I look forward to see what other mysteries will be solved, not will unfold. I'm worried about North Falls. It does not sound like a town that has gone through a lot of nice things, but I am very interested to see what Emmy and Jude are up to in the future. Female relationships between friends, between cousins, between mothers and daughters is a huge theme in this book, and is explored in a way that is very illuminating and very, very smart. And none of these characters is one thing. All of them are fully realized, and all of them are flawed. All of them have amazing, great points about them. all of the characters feel like actual people. You don't always get that in a thriller, but this book is not just a good thriller, it's a good book. It's a good piece of literary fiction. So that's it. 3 dark and twisty new thrillers for you to check out. Have a great week, and I'll see you soon. Bye.